They said humans couldn't read clocks. Then she broke time inside the academy. The alien academy of Velzar was a sprawling fortress of marble spires and humming crystal towers that floated above the dark gas giant below. Students of dozens of species walked its halls, chittering, buzzing, gliding, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. And in the middle of it all, one human girl sat slouched in her chair, chin resting on her fist, staring at the device hovering on the dais. The chronolock. The lesson today was supposed to be a demonstration of temporal mechanics, something the Velzar professors claimed only the most advanced minds of the galaxy could comprehend. The device pulsed with shifting bands of blue and silver light, freezing and unfreezing objects with perfect precision. A Droxian lizard had tossed a coin into the field, and it hung motionless in midair, frozen beyond time itself. The other students gasped in awe. The professor, a tall insectoid creature with mandibles clicking in satisfaction, waved his limb-like arms and droned, "Behold the chrono lock. None of you will ever unlock its secret. It is sealed against chaos. It is sealed against error. It is sealed against humans." The last word was said with particular disdain. Every eye turned toward the lone human in the class. She yawned. Her name was Mira Torres, exchange student from Earth, and she had been enduring months of sneers and lectures about human backwardness. Humans were considered primitive at Velsar Academy, tolerated only because the Galactic Accord demanded inclusivity. Mira's textbooks had been thicker than her torso, full of equations about time dilation, quantum cycles, temporal elasticity. She had skimmed them during meals, half bored, doodling spirals and jokes in the margins. The chrono lock floated higher. The professor tapped his mandibles and announced, "A challenge. Any who can disrupt the lock without destroying themselves shall earn eternal credit." "You will fail," of course, aliens lined up, trying one by one. A six-eyed Ilthian focused its mental energy, sweat beating across its crystalline skin, only to collapse when the lock pulsed back a shockwave. A feathery Rawl attempted to chant in harmonics that supposedly matched the device's rhythm, but the lock merely blinked and the Rawl was thrown backward into the wall. Mira watched them with half-closed eyes, tapping her pencil on the desk. Finally, the professor turned toward her. "Human, we will skip your attempt. It would be embarrassing." That snapped her awake. Mira stood, cracked her neck, and sauntered toward the floating device. The other students whispered. "Humans don't even have neural laces," hissed a scaled alien. "She will disintegrate." Mira tilted her head. "It's just a clock, right?" The professor clicked angrily. "It is not a clock. It is a chronolock, forged by the ancients of Velsar to withstand all tampering." Mira reached out, ignoring him. The lock shimmered, its bands tightening as though daring her to try. She didn't conjure energy beams. She didn't chant harmonics. She simply placed her hand on the side and closed her eyes. Time bent around her fingers. She felt it. Not equations or alien theory, but a pulse. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Beneath the shimmering field, the chronolock was nothing but rhythm. Mira grinned. Her grandmother had taught her rhythm with spoons and pans in the kitchen back on Earth. Timing was human culture. Music, heartbeat, laughter, the beat of marching feet in a parade. She tapped the lock with her knuckle. Once, twice, syncopated, then deliberately offbeat. The bands of light flickered uncertainly. She whistled a human tune, something absurd and catchy. The chrono lock vibrated. The professor shrieked, "Stop at once!" Too late. The lock unraveled like tangled string, the coin frozen inside clattering to the floor. Gasps filled the hall. The lock hung in midair for a second more, then shattered into fragments of light that rained harmlessly onto Mira's shoulders. The academy trembled. A ripple of disbelief spread through the alien students. "She broke it," whispered one with tentacles coiling in shock. A human broke the chrono lock. Mira brushed her hands together. "So, what's for lunch?" The silence was suffocating. Then the alarms blared. The academy's defense grid lit up, scarlet lines racing across the walls. Holograms of military officers flickered into being, demanding explanations. Breaking a chrono lock was supposed to be impossible. It wasn't just a classroom toy. It was part of the Academy's defense. If one human student could crack it, the entire galaxy's assumptions about time control were in jeopardy. Suddenly, Velsar Academy was on the brink of panic. Mira blinked as soldiers stomped into the room, weapons raised. The professor chittered wildly, pointing at her. She is the one. The human tampered with our sacred defense. Mira lifted her hands lazily. Hey, I just tapped it. Didn't mean to cause a meltdown, but deep inside, she felt something shift. The rhythm hadn't ended with the chrono lock. It was still echoing inside her, like the beat of a song she hadn't finished. The soldiers demanded she come with them. The students whispered louder. Some with fear, some with awe. A human had broken time. What else could she do? As Mira was escorted out, she glanced back at the professor. His mandibles clattered furiously, but his eyes betrayed something new. Not contempt, fear. And that made her smile. Because for the first time since she arrived, Mira realized she wasn't just another student in an alien academy. She was about to become the most dangerous question the galaxy had ever asked. What happens when a human rewrites time itself? The academy guards tried to look composed, but their heavy footfalls betrayed unease. Mira was marched through the towering halls of Velsar Academy, past mosaics of alien heroes who had supposedly mastered the forces of space and time. Students leaned out of doorways to watch her pass, whispers chasing her like shadows. She shattered the chrono lock, one voice hissed. Humans are unstable, another added. Mira rolled her eyes. You guys act like I just unplugged your Wi-Fi. None of them got the joke. The guards led her to the central spire where the chancellor of the academy awaited. Chancellor Kurith was a towering cephalopod, his head crowned with bioluminescent markings that pulsed with irritation. Around him sat the High Council of Velsar, elders from multiple species, each glaring at the human girl who dared to challenge their reality. Kurith's voice gurgled through the chamber. You disrupted a relic of the ancients, a device that kept this academy safe for centuries. Explain, Naira shrugged, hands shoved in her pockets. You called it unbreakable. I touched it. Now it's broken. Maybe your lock wasn't as good as you thought. A ripple of outrage spread through the council. One elder pounded the table with a claw. Impossible! The lock resists all calculated interference. Mira tilted her head. Yeah, see, that's your problem. You're too calculated. Time isn't math, it's rhythm. You try to cage it with formulas, but you don't listen to it. Humans, we live by it. We feel it. Every second is a song. The chamber fell silent. Kurith's lights dimmed. A song, he repeated, dripping disdain. Mira smirked. Yeah, and your chronolock? It was way off beat. And before the elders could react, alarms blared again, louder this time, not from the academy, but from orbit. Holograms flickered above the council table, showing fleets of angular warships sliding out of the void. Not just any ships, these were the Zareth Dominion, a militant empire that had long been held back by the chrono-lock defenses around Velsar. And now those defenses were gone. The academy shook as explosions echoed from the outer shields. Kurith's lights flared in panic. The Dominion knew. They waited for this weakness. Mira raised her hand. Hey, not to rub it in, but maybe relying on a fancy hourglass to keep you safe wasn't the smartest idea. The guards grabbed her shoulders, ready to drag her away as a scapegoat. But Kareth stopped them. His voice was strained. No, she broke the lock. She must understand it. If she can break it, perhaps she can rebuild it. Mira blinked. Wait, you want me to fix your homework assignment while you're being invaded? The council glared. Do it, human. She thought for a second, then grinned. All right, but you'll owe me. And I don't mean free cafeteria credits. I want access to your entire temporal archives. The council sputtered. Demands were rarely made to them. But with Zareth warships raining fire from the skies, they had no choice. Kurith hissed, agreed. Mira was rushed to the control nexus, a colossal chamber where energy conduits webbed the walls. At its center floated the core lock, a massive version of the device she had just shattered, designed to extend protection over the entire academy and nearby systems. It was failing, lights flickering, its pulse out of sync. Engineers shouted equations, alien symbols dancing across the screens, but nothing stabilized it. Mira walked straight to it and pressed her palm against the field. Again she felt it, the pulse of time, faint and broken. Offbeat, struggling to keep rhythm. She closed her eyes and began tapping her foot. "You're trying to force it to tick your way," she muttered. "But time isn't a machine. It's jazz." She started humming, tapping, then clapping a syncopated rhythm. The aliens around her stared in disbelief as the pulses of the core lock shifted, wavering, then slowly adjusting to her beat. But just as stability seemed possible, the chamber rocked with a direct hit. The Zareth had breached the outer shield. Soldiers shouted. Alarms screamed. Mira's rhythm faltered. She scowled. "Nope, not today." She slammed her palm harder onto the core lock and shouted over the noise. "Everyone, shut up and follow the beat." Without waiting, she stomped in rhythm, clapping sharp accents. Hesitant at first, the alien engineers joined, stomping, clapping, buzzing, humming, adding their own strange harmonics. The core lock pulsed brighter, sinking to the cacophony. For the first time, the chrono system of Velzar was not being controlled by equations, but by a chorus. Time itself seemed to bend, flowing with the rhythm of the living beings around it. Outside, Zareth warships suddenly slowed, their weapons fire dragging like syrup, engines sputtering as if caught in a different tempo. Inside, Mira felt the beats surge through her chest. The lock wasn't just fixed, it was transformed. Velsar had never seen time wielded like this. The Chancellor stared, light patterns flaring wildly. She bends time with instinct alone. But the battle was far from over. The Zareth were adapting, recalibrating their weapons. The warships accelerated again, pressing their attack. Mira exhaled, sweat dripping from her brow. "All right, so the lock buys us time. But if you really want to win this fight, we're going to need to go on offense." The Council's holograms appeared around her, alarmed. "Humans do not lead wars here," one hissed. Mira grinned. "Then maybe it's time you learned what happens when we do." Her eyes flicked to the schematics of the Zareth fleet. She had no fancy neural lace, no alien math, but she had rhythm. And if time could dance, maybe she could teach their enemies what it meant to lose the beat. She cracked her knuckles, staring at the glowing core lock as if it were a drum set waiting for the next song. Let's see how they handle a remix. The command deck of Velzar Academy shook with another impact as Zareth Dominion forces closed in. Their warships cut arcs of light across the gas giant's sky, enormous black vessels with jagged hulls that drank in starlight. The alien council members panicked, voices rising, equations flashing across the screens. But none of their methods could stop the swarm pressing in. Mira Torres cracked her knuckles and tilted her head, letting the rhythm of the core lock vibrate in her chest. It wasn't steady anymore. It was wild, flexible, improvisational, like a drum solo rolling off into chaos. Perfect. "All right," she muttered, more to herself than to the dozens of species around her. "You wanted to see how humans fight a war? Here it is. We don't just endure, we remix the rules." She slapped the core lock with both hands, and suddenly the entire chamber pulsed to a new beat. The floor itself thrummed. Engineers stumbled, caught in the rhythm, their hearts sinking with the pulse. The core lock's bands of light expanded outward, pushing a temporal wave into orbit. Zareth warships that had been rushing forward at deadly speed found themselves dragging, their weapons fire stretching into threads of slow light, their engines stuttering like a broken record. Mira grinned. Too slow. She stomped again, hard, and the pulse flipped. Time snapped forward like a whip. Velsar defense drones, once sluggish, now darted like sparks, slicing through Zareth hulls before the invaders could react. Alien officers gasped. The Chancellor's lights pulsed in disbelief. Mira, sweat dripping, kept the rhythm going, clapping, stomping, commanding the core lock as if it were her personal instrument. The war turned into a concert. Every stomp, every clap, shifted the tempo of battle. Zareth beams dragged into useless strings. Their missile volleys slowed until defense turrets swatted them like gnats. Velsar fighters surged with sudden bursts of speed, darting in and out of enemy formations, shredding them. But the Zareth weren't done. Their flagship emerged, a colossal dreadnought bristling with spines that glowed with concentrated temporal energy. Mira's eyes widened as the readings flashed across the consoles. Oh great! They've got their own time toy. The flagship unleashed its weapon, a massive chrono breaker beam. It wasn't designed to freeze, it was designed to fracture, ripping apart timelines. A ripple of distortion tore through space, splitting images of fighters into multiple futures before crushing them into nothing. Mira's heart pounded. For the first time, she felt the rhythm falter. The Zareth had their own beat, chaotic and jagged, not music but a drill grinding through silence. The core lock shuddered. Alien engineers panicked, their harmonics breaking into frightened static. Mira shouted, "Stop listening to their noise! Follow me!" She slammed her hand on the console, then began snapping her fingers, sharp and confident. The sound cut through the chaos. Snap, snap, snap. A simple beat. Familiar. Human. The alien crew hesitated, then joined, stomping, humming, buzzing along. Slowly, the core lock steadied again. Mara leaned forward, eyes blazing. You want to fight rhythm with noise? Let's dance. She began layering the beat, clapping on the off notes, whistling counterpoints, building complexity on top of simplicity until the core lock thrummed like a living heart. Time bent wildly in orbit. Zareth ships staggered, their beam attacks flickering as Mira's rhythm bent seconds sideways. Explosions erupted in stuttering bursts, their dreadnought caught in overlapping frames. Mira stomped again and shouted, "Now!" Velzar defense forces poured every shot they had into the flagship. Under normal time, the dreadnought would have shrugged it off. But Mira had bent the seconds, so each blast struck over and over, echoes of destruction layering together. The dreadnought screamed with shattering metal, its spines snapping like brittle glass. Finally, with one last booming clap, Mira collapsed the rhythm into a single crushing beat. Time snapped shut around the flagship. The Zareth warship froze in place, twisted mid-explosion, then shattered into fragments that burned across the sky like fireworks. The remaining Zareth fleet broke ranks, scattering in panic. Without their temporal weapon, they were nothing but steel and arrogance. Velsar fighters swarmed, tearing them apart or chasing them into the void. The battle was over. The chamber was silent but for the heavy breathing of every alien who had witnessed what had just happened. Mira staggered back from the core lock, her hands trembling, her throat dry, but her grin wide. That's how humans keep time. The council holograms flickered back into the chamber, their faces unreadable. The Chancellor's bioluminescent patterns were rippled with something Mira had never seen in them before. Respect. You saved us, Kareth said slowly. You turned our greatest weakness into a weapon. Mira shrugged, still panting. No big deal, just needed a little rhythm. The room erupted with voices, praise, awe, fear. Some called her dangerous, others hailed her as a savior. Mira waved it all off. She wasn't here for statues or medals. She just wanted to prove that humans weren't the primitives these aliens thought. And judging by the trembling looks of the council, that message had landed. Later, when the Academy rebuilt its defenses, they begged Mira to teach them her methods. She agreed, but with a twist. No more chrono locks locked away behind equations. Instead, she taught them rhythm. Music classes replaced some of the dry mathematics. Aliens with tentacles learned to drum. Feathered students sang harmonies. In time, Velsar Academy didn't just master temporal mechanics. They learned to feel it. And at the center of it all was one human girl with a grin, sitting cross-legged on a desk, tapping a pencil against a book while dozens of species followed her beat. Across the galaxy, whispers spread of what had happened. A single human student had broken the chronolock, faced the Dominion's ultimate weapon, and turned the tide of battle not with formulas, not with machines, but with rhythm. The Zareth Dominion, once feared, now trembled at the thought of facing humans who could twist time with a snap and a laugh. And Mira, she didn't care about the legends. She was too busy teaching a class of aliens how to clap on beat without messing it up. For the first time, Velzar Academy's halls echoed not with fear or disdain, but with laughter, stomps, and the wild, unstoppable sound of a galaxy learning what it truly meant to move to the rhythm of humanity. Did you like today's story? Then catch our posts at 3 p.m. Eastern Time daily. Unfold more intergalactic stories with Professor Space.